regarding the process. Okay? Okay, so there's a reason for that. We had an organizing convention a week ago, and there's a transition. There's a transition from people who held those positions to people who are now holding those positions. And so there's a little bit of effort, reaching out. So you should be, Don told me they just got the list, and so you should be getting, yeah. So, but let me kind of explain. I just want to make sure everybody understands. So we have an organizing convention at the county, and we have an organizing convention for the state, and for both of those conventions, we elect the leaders. For the county, we elect legislative chairs, senate chairs, which make up the executive committee, and then you have precinct chairs and vice chairs who make up the county central committee. And we elect precinct chairs at caucus, but we elect the executive committee and the officers at the organizing convention. The state party has the same setup. So we have the organizing convention come up where we will elect our next officers. And, I forgot to mention, state central committee members are also elected at the organizing convention that we just had. So there's a transition. There's always a few bumps in the transition of information. But we do know when it is, right? It is, I'm not going to be able to, May 17th at UVU. Okay. So, okay, we'll come back to that. So did I answer questions? Does that make more sense to you? So the nominating convention is where we elect our representatives, governor for the Republican Party, all the different senators, congressmen at the nominating convention. And that took place last year. Did I see a hand? Is it not crystal clear to anyone? Because it took me a while to really understand how it all worked, but it was mostly because I didn't really ask questions, and I just kind of figured it all out by accident. So, all right. So tonight we are having a Meet the Candidate event for the officers that are running for the state organizing convention. And tonight there's the chair, the vice chair, the treasurer, and the secretary-treasurer. Both the vice chair and the treasurer, there's only one candidate, so they will assume the position by acclamation. The chair and the secretary's race have each 2 candidates, and we have those candidates here tonight. And so what we're going to do is the new Davis County Republican Party chair, Don Guyman, is going to moderate and ask questions. Yes, let's give Don. We are super excited to have Don. He is a master at all of this. Like, he knows stuff really well. So we're excited to have him. And he's going to moderate this event, and so he'll kind of explain how it's going to happen. Are we going to do secretary or chair first? I think let's do secretary first. Is that okay? So we can have Stafford Palmieri. Is that okay? Seaver. Yeah, I can remember if that was your maiden or your. So yeah, you can sit there, and then I'm going to turn it over to Don.
So, sorry, Tina, really quick. I do have a couple of announcements. So, like most of these events that you guys come to, we're going to pass the can, collect donations to help our organization fund the things that we're doing, and also help build our war chest to fund candidates for elections next season. Also want everyone to know that starting next week, we're going to start advertising for a fundraiser event. The weekends of May 31st, June 14th, and June 28th, we're going to be having a Davis County Conservatives fundraiser. We are going to be having a movie night on each of those nights, or movie afternoon, over at the Kaysville Theater. May 31st will be Star Wars Episode 4. The 14th will be Episode 5, and the 28th will be Episode 6. And we'll advertise and start selling tickets for that next week.
That made me remember that I forgot two things. I was saying our purposes, the first is to inform, and which we hold our community forums. The second is to help find people to run for political office. That's all offices, for our county mayors, everything. So, and then we try to help those people get elected. And the third is to mobilize people. So if there are things that we need to mobilize people for, then we're communicating with people and asking for their help. So, thanks.
Yeah, kind of what we were going to have you do is probably, or if you want to sit down or stand up to answer the questions, whatever is most comfortable for you.
Why don't you take that one and give that to these people?
Look at people problem solving. All right.
Smart.
So I wanted to thank everyone for being here tonight. I just want to just take a moment of personal privilege, because with getting elected to the DCRP chair, that means I'll be stepping down from the board here of the Davis County Conservatives probably here soon as I get a couple of things wrapped up. So I just want to thank the board and the opportunity. It's been a blessing to serve with them and have these events, and that brings the bittersweet of being the chair. But good people we have here, and hopefully you'll still see me at these events probably. So let me just kind of give the format for how we're going to do this event tonight. We're going to give each of the candidates 3 minutes to give an opening statement. Then we have about 10 questions here that I'm going to ask. I'm going to give you each 1 minute to answer the questions. And then at the end, we'll give you 2 minutes to wrap things up. Is that clear? So to see who goes first, I did not have a coin, but I'm going to just say, who wants to go, say odds or evens?
Odds.
Odds. Yeah, it was 3 I wrote down there, so. All right. So Olivia, that means you go first. So
Okay.
We'll turn over to Olivia Dawn for a 3-minute opening statement.
Hi, everybody. Can you hear me okay? My name is Olivia Dawn. On the ballot, you're also going to see Horlocker Williams. I'm not hiding my last names. They're just a lot. And I keep them really only because I love the people that I come from and I've married into, but I'm not publicly known by either of those names, so you'll hear me reference and you'll see all the signs and everything say Olivia Dawn. That's why. Dawn is easy to say. It's my middle name. It's a good thing. So, Olivia Dawn. I'm a mom of 2 kids. I am the oldest of 10 children. Tina is my mother. I have been raising children since I was 2, so I have a lot of parenting practice prior to having my own children. But let me tell you, it's different when you're a sister versus a mom, and I'm learning that right now with my 2 beautiful little girls. As far as politically, my involvement started when I was 12 years old. And it really even earlier than that, growing up, learning from my mom as she was getting her master's degree. I got to attend some of the classes that she was studying. She studied political economics, and I learned right along with her. So I've been a student of the Constitution and the political processes throughout the state and the country my entire life. But when I was 12, I started attending the legislative session as a teen Eagle with the Utah Eagle Forum, and I loved it. And I was like, this is amazing that citizens get to be involved and participate in the process. Then when I turned 18, I got to attend my first caucus. And again, I was like, this is amazing. The fact that citizens get to be involved in the political process. I love that. I think it's absolutely incredible. And that began my love of the caucus and convention system, the citizen-run government that is the state and the nation. And it really opened my eyes to so many of the problems that are happening in our country and in our state, where so many of the elected officials don't believe that they actually are beholden to the citizens, that we are their employers, that we are their constituents, and they're responsible to us. So that is something that I started to really be passionate about, and I got involved with an organization called Keep My Voice, who were working to protect our caucus and convention system as it was being attacked by people outside of our state who wanted to take over, and they wanted to be in control of the legislators and everyone else who was in government. And that was something that I really, really had a big problem with. So I got involved with all of that, and really, for me, it was more of just I needed to continue to be involved. I previously ran for state party secretary and held that term for 2 years. Most recently, I was the Davis County Republican Party secretary. I love the organizational aspect of being a secretary, and that's why I'm running again, because I think our party's lacking in organization.
I can say Winston's going to be our timekeeper, so he'll be here.
It's nice to see all of you. Thank you so much for spending your Thursday evening with us. I'm Stafford Palmieri Sievert. I also have a lot of last names like Olivia does, except I also don't have a first name because my parents had a sense of humor and gave me a last name as a first name. So incidentally, before I got married and made my maiden name my middle name was Olivia, just to make it even more confusing for all of you. I am the current state party secretary, and when I ran 2 years ago, I had just gotten married, and I was really passionate about building a Utah that I could raise a family in. And since then, I have become a mom. I have a beautiful little boy, and his name is Thaddeus. And is there something wrong? Your battery's dying. Oh, my battery's dying. Oh, thank you. Okay, his name is Thaddeus, and the reason I'm running for re-election is because we are at a critical moment where we now own the White House and both houses of Congress. We still have a supermajority here in Utah, and it is even more important for us to capitalize on this moment. So for the last 2 years, I have spent a lot of time getting the party organized. We were using spreadsheets. We had a website that was on WordPress, and it had some security issues. And so we have actually put a lot of protections in place to protect your data, to protect our voter data, to make sure that information is easy to access. We rolled out a new website. We rolled out a new logo. And that's actually part of what the secretary does. So the secretary in the bylaws has some specific responsibilities, but I took that a step further and I said, how could I act as a marketing and communications person for the party? How could I help us attract really strong Republican candidates to run for office to keep this state red? And that's what I did for the last 2 years. And now that I'm a mom, I'm even more passionate about making sure that my son can afford, honestly, to live here. And I, prior to being the state party secretary, was also I was also involved in the Davis County Republican Party as the Senate chair and the Lincoln Club president. So I've been around this system, and I think the Utah caucus and convention system is incredibly unique. It is the only system actually where delegates are electing candidates. There are other states that have caucus systems like Iowa, but those delegates actually only elect the president, and then they do party business, but they don't actually have a participatory role in the primary process at all. And as I see what's happening to the United States and sort of the massive shift, particularly in the West left, we need to make sure that our representatives, as Olivia said, she and I agree on this, are accountable to the voters. And Utah has an incredible system that allows us to do that. And for us to be able to execute on that, we have to have the infrastructure behind it to start and keep building. So I want to stay in this role because I spent 2 years working really, really hard to get us to this point, and there is more work to be done. And I want to keep doing that work. And so I would love to continue being your secretary.
And why don't you stay right there, because we'll have the first question to you.
Sure.
And just so everyone knows, we as a board met last night and came up with these questions. We'd also encourage you, and hopefully the candidates will stick around for a few minutes afterwards if you have individual questions that didn't get asked here, okay? So once again, we'll start with you, and you'll have 1 minute to answer this question. Why are you a Republican, and what purpose does the party serve in our state?
Great. So I'm a Republican because when I was 12, my mom started charging me taxes on the income that I was making working for a tax accountant in my building, this is pre-computers, organizing his clients' receipts. And as a result, I learned the importance of a dollar. Then I worked actually in the administration of Louisiana Governor Bobby Jindal. This was from 2010 to 2016. And what I learned in that process is that government is incredibly poor at solving problems, and that in any situation, I'm going to defer to a private solution, and that government has a very specific restrained role of solving collective good problems, like the military, for example. That's a collective action problem that an individual can't solve as well. But outside of that, all it does is muck everything up. So in Utah, the role of the party is to recruit really good candidates and then help them get elected, and to build the infrastructure so that they can run a campaign.
The Republican Party, the main purpose of that is to unite other people who align with the same principles and values that we do. Those principles and values are laid out very clearly in the Republican Party platform. Some of my favorites are limited government, holding elected officials responsible and accountable for the things we demand, honesty and integrity for our elected officials, the right of life, protecting the unborn, the born, and everyone else. There's a multitude of planks within the platform that define what it means to be a Republican, and the Republican Party's responsibility is to unite others who align with those same planks. If you don't align with those planks, that's the purpose of a political party, is to find one that you do align with. The Republican Party right now across the country, and especially in the state of Utah, is having an identity crisis because we don't recognize the importance of that platform, and that's what defines us. That's who we are, and that's the purpose of the Republican Party.
Okay, next question for Olivia. What is the plank that has the most meaning to you of our platform? What is a practical example of that, and how have you fought for that principle?
Specifically, I mentioned it already, the right to life. Having two beautiful little girls, I now understand even more acutely what it means to be pregnant and to carry that child within me, and for them to be so incredibly vulnerable and entirely dependent on me. And anyone who makes the argument that that is not the reality is wrong. I also believe in the right of family, in protecting the traditional family values. Every family should and every child deserves to have a father and a mother in their home if at all possible. And where not possible, we as a community need to rally around those families to help lift those children up, again, under the principles and values that we hold so dear. I could probably list more, but I think I'm going to hit just those two and be good with for now.
I also love the right to life plank, but I'm going to pick the limited government plank. So as I was just mentioning a couple minutes ago, government has a very specific and prescribed limited role. And when it gets outside of that role, it tends to muck around. So one of the things I did in a past life is education policy. I've had a number of people ask me, how could we possibly get rid of the Federal Department of Education? Well, let me tell you a little bit about how you get rid of the Federal Department of Education. It has essentially 4 things that should be kept. And this is just a good example of limited government. And outside of those 4 things, all it's doing is just mucking around in education. That's it. It doesn't need to exist anymore. It collects data about how students are performing. That could go to the Department of Labor. It provides money for socially economic disadvantaged students. That can go to Treasury. It oversees student loans. That also can go to Treasury. And it has a civil rights division, which we don't really need as much anymore as we did at one point, but that can go to DOJ. And boom, you've now eliminated the Department of Education. This is a perfect example of how government tends to spiral out of control.
Okay. What is one specific mistake you have made in your public service, or what is something you would have done differently?
Oh, so I believe in working smarter, not harder. And the secretary role has a number of administrative tasks that can actually be quite burdensome. And over time, I have tried to improve those tasks so that I can get information out to the SEC, for example, faster. So, for example, we have a roster of members in the SEC, and it has been historically managed in a spreadsheet, not the cleanest, easiest way to be managed, and also takes me a ton of time to update. So I think if I could go back and start again as secretary, looking at what a secretary actually does, I would have immediately gone through and tried to smartify all of the processes so that I could get things out the door as fast as possible. And I did that a little bit. I kind of learned as I went. So that would be something I would go back and do a little bit better.
I know that I'm running for secretary, but one of the mistakes that I made was actually not in the role of secretary that I wanted to address. I was the fundraising chair for the Davis County Republican Party for 2 years, well, actually 4 years, where we ran the Lincoln Day dinner, and we attempted to do some other events and different things. And I felt like one of the things that we really struggled with was communications with the community to be able to then utilize the fundraising potential that we had to do more than one event a year, which we are the fundraising arm as the Senate chairs the Lincoln Day Committee in the county. And so we should be doing more than one event, and we need to be better at communicating that. And I was able to then take that lesson and turn it around as secretary when I served previously to be able to communicate well. People within the State Central Committee, the Executive Committee, and the other bodies of which I was over as secretary received notice and minutes within the prescribed timeline that they were supposed to, and that was something that I learned and was able to correct in that responsibility.
Okay, we both have a unique situation here where you both have been state party secretary before. So we're going to ask some questions kind of about your style and about things during, so I'd like you to reiterate to what your service was in that role, okay? So first of all, when you're party secretary, did you enjoy the job, and what was the most difficult part of the job for you?
I loved being party secretary. Being, like, running for this again, a lot of people are like, why on earth are you doing it? It's a little bit of glutton for punishment to get back into this role because it is a lot of work, but I loved it. I loved communicating with people across the state. I loved traveling to different counties and being able to meet them and get to know them. My favorite is the SCC meetings. A lot of people hate those SCC meetings. I love them. There's currently a time limit on those meetings of 4 hours. I don't think that time limit should exist because we need to be willing to do the work of the body. You have 4 meetings a year. You should be able to black out a Saturday and be there as long as it takes. I've never complained about being there for 8 or more hours. That's something that's so incredibly important. The most hard thing was probably just responding to emails and text messages, which you get many of as secretary. And when people would ask me why certain things weren't happening, I'd have to explain to them that if it was my role, I either didn't have access to it because I was prohibited from having access to certain things, or being able to then learn and figure things out quickly. So that's that.
I have loved building the party's brand. There are many things about being secretary that I've really liked. I really liked rewriting the ops manual. So we have an operations manual that helps transition the party and outlines what we do as a party from a process standpoint. It hadn't been updated since 2016. So I led an effort. It was there were 10, 12 people that contributed to it to update that operations manual. I also did an entire cleanup of the bylaws and proposed over 30 proposals to the SEC. We haven't gotten through all of them. This is some of the work that is left undone that I would like to keep doing to clarify confusing sections of the bylaws. They hadn't been cleaned up in a really long time. So there's lots of things I really liked, but the thing I loved the most was the rebranding exercise, because that's how we attract young people. That's how we attract more Republicans to the party. We need people to participate in the process, and we need a brand that represents our values and makes people excited to participate in the process. So that was my favorite part.
Okay. When you were party secretary, as party secretary, what did you do to promote transparency of attendance and roll call votes in the SCC meetings?
So we have a process, and Olivia did it this way, and I've been doing it this way too. I haven't changed the process, where we publish the attendance and votes on the website. So we keep a roster of how people vote and whether they're in person or remote. We have improved that process by using a check-in, check-out process. So we have a new bylaw that allows something called a consent vote. So now when people check out of the meeting, we can actually see that they've left or whether or not they're in the room. And we also have a voting mechanism now that we use that captures the votes automatically. And so we can turn that around faster and show everybody who has voted on what. So there is a spreadsheet right now. If you go to utgop.org/SEC, you can go see the attendance and votes of all the SEC members for the last 2 years.
During my entire term as secretary, the attendance and votes, the roster, and everything, including contact information, which is required to be public and accessible, was on the website and available immediately without needing to request it. Unfortunately, the last 2 years, that's not been the case. The website does have that stuff on there now, but it doesn't right now, or it didn't 2 weeks ago. So when I was secretary, I really worked hard to make sure that the attendance was public the whole time. And if anyone had an issue or a complaint or needed to correct something, they could email me and I was able to update it very quickly. And they had a running access to that thing. Yes, I had it on a spreadsheet, but the spreadsheet's not hard to manage. And I was able to give access to people to check people in. And then at the end of every meeting, I was able to personally verify that it was in there, remove everyone's access who had been helping with checking in, and then make sure that it was, again, immediately available on the website, and it was never taken down during my entire term.
Will you please describe your style of keeping minutes at a meeting?
Robert's Rules requires that parliamentary actions be recorded in the minutes. That means direct quotes of motions being made and the results of those. Any subsidiary motions would be on there as well. The way that I did this was to be able to lay out an agenda that was forwarded to the body of the executive committee or the state central committee. And then from there, I would make a copy of the agenda as the meeting was starting, and I would work off the agenda in real time to be able to say, okay, this action was listed, what happens here? And I was able to put bullet points and different things of that nature, tabbing in if it was a sub motion, and then able to show pass or fail. If there were vote counts, then I also hyperlinked it to the spread. So I had the spreadsheet where I tracked those roll call votes, but then they were hyperlinked to the minutes. So it's very easy to be able to see. I'd put the totals, and if you wanted to see who voted what way, it was right there in those minutes. I was also able to make sure that parliamentary actions that don't require a vote were included as well. That's point of order, requests for information, things of that nature, which I think are important for the substance of the meeting to have on record.
Olivia and I actually have a very similar approach to minutes with a couple differences. One is that I didn't actually know you hyperlinked the vote. That's actually a really good idea. You should have told me that. I would have done it. But I also, when we did onboarding 2 years ago, when I became the secretary, before she was secretary before me, she and I walked through this, and I have actually been following a very similar process, which is I make a copy of the agenda, and I start the minutes on the agenda. So I don't have much more, I guess, to add there. I do want to just say one thing about why the attendance and votes were not on the website 2 weeks ago, which is that we had just launched the new website. So we were adding some additional content. There was a little bit of a transition period. So I thought I would just let you all know why that happened. But you should go look at our beautiful website, because it really is quite nice, if I might do say so myself. So.
Are you running as secretary to attain a higher office, and will you commit to serving your full 2-year term?
I am not running to run for a higher office, and I have no plans to run for any other office, so I don't see why there would be any reason why I wouldn't serve my full 2-year term. As I mentioned when I did my introduction, I'm running because there's work that's left to be done, and I spent over 100 hours going through our bylaws and trying to clean them up. I'll give you an example. There's actually something that will be on the convention agenda that will change the party's fiscal year from July 1st to October 1st, and I'll tell you why. Because our bylaws actually have a conflicting provision in them, which says that the new leadership team has to submit the budget for the last SEC meeting of the fiscal year, but it has to go through the executive committee. Well, the executive committee is actually elected at that same meeting. So literally, we cannot have the body that the bylaw requires approve the budget because of the timeline in the bylaws. Well, now there's a constitutional amendment, you'll see it if you're a state delegate, on the convention agenda to fix that, because that's silly and we should have the executive committee approve the budget. So that's some of the work that is left undone that I would like to get done.
One of the reasons that I am running for secretary is because I was asked to do so. At our last SCC meeting in February, we had a special election to fill the rest of the term for Utah Republican Party secretary, because Stafford had actually decided that she wanted to run for an open seat in Morgan when Kira Birkeland stepped down. She ended up coming back and was running for that role to fill the rest of the term, and if she was willing to do it, then I had no interest in stepping in for the last couple of months. But I was asked to run because I was able to serve my 2-year term. Prior to getting married, I attended an SCC meeting from my honeymoon. I announced at SCC meetings that I was pregnant twice. I brought my baby to the meeting, and I have shown that through personal changes in my life and through everything else, I have no interest in stepping away from a commitment from this party. If I'm elected to this position, I will hold the entire 2 years, regardless of what other opportunities present themselves. I'm committing to be the secretary for the full term.
What role should the secretary play in calling a special meeting?
Robert's rules. I'm studying to become a parliamentarian, so I have a lot of experience with Robert's Rules of Order, and if anyone has a question about how all of that works, feel free to come and ask me. I always try to be accessible to people when we're at conventions or different meetings. If they have a question for how to do something, I want to be able to coach you through it if you have a question. And one of the things that allows for a special meeting within Robert's Rules is that any officer can participate in being the one to send out. It doesn't have to be an officer. Any person within the body, if you have enough people to call a special meeting, can send the notice out. I, as previous secretary, had been asked by a number of members of the State Central Committee to send a notice of a special meeting out because I'd previously been secretary and knew the format and how to do everything, and we were within our rights to do that according to Robert's rules to call a special meeting, and I sent it because I had the format to do so.
Special meetings, as Olivia mentioned, can be called by a group of members of the body if they get enough people to sign on to it, and they can send out that special meeting. The chair can also call a special meeting, and the secretary sends out that call additionally. So I'm a little bit, I guess, confused by the question because I send out all the calls for all the meetings when Rob calls a meeting. And we do them timely with the correct agenda and all of the information. And if a body, a group of delegates, or excuse me, a group of the SEC decides to call a special meeting, and then Rob decides to call the special meeting because they've asked for it, I also sent out that call. So happy to send out calls for special meetings. That is part of the secretary's job. It's actually something that's spelled out explicitly in the bylaws in addition to taking minutes. So I don't know that I have anything else to add to that.
How should an outgoing secretary handle the data that is transferred to the incoming secretary?
Okay, so I actually think Olivia and I had a really good working relationship when we did this the last time, which is that we met at one of the Davis County libraries, I don't remember which one, and we sat down and we went through all the information, we went through the inbox, we went through the processes, and I think that's actually really important. Win or lose, we are all adults, and the bigger picture goal here is the strength of the party, so I would be committed if I am not successful to helping with that transition and handing over information to whoever succeeds me, and I would expect the same, if the tables were reversed. And so I commend Olivia. I've given her multiple shout outs at SEC meetings for this because she did not get the same treatment by her predecessor. So I think that's really how we should be handling it, is that in the end of the day, the party's best interest is for us to transition appropriately, whoever wins or loses.
Stafford and I have tried really hard to maintain a really good relationship through the last 2 years. It's hard to do that when you were going against someone in a campaign, and sometimes you have to attack style or you have to do things of that nature, and it can be hard to maintain that friendly relationship, but we have, and I'm so grateful for that. And I think one of the reasons that that was the case is because we both truly did care about the party's management and what was best for the party, like you just said. And so that's why the transition was what it was. It was important to me that no matter what happened, that the party had what it needed. Our party currently has a technology chair that manages a lot of our data through his website and his system and everything that nature. He's also the credentials chair this year, and he has access to all of this data that I would hope the secretary still has oversight over, because that's what the bylaws call for. And so I would hope that whatever the transition is, the credentials chair does not withhold information like they did during my term. The secretary has access to that data because that's their job, and that it will be transitioned to whomever the party leadership is at the time.
This will be our last question. How do you feel about meetings conducted with the Zoom option?
Hate it. Hate it. Having access to Zoom has been helpful for me on a couple different occasions, like I said, from my honeymoon, but I was planning to attend in person from my honeymoon. We were going to come back from California to St. George, be in person for the meeting, and then go back to California for my honeymoon. But then the chair decided last minute to change it, and that was really frustrating. So we did call in from Zoom instead of coming all the way back to Layton for that meeting. But I hate the online option. When you are online, you cannot be heard, you cannot be spoken to. When you are calling for a challenge the ruling of the chair, your mic gets cut off and you get threatened to be shut off the internet. And that's not appropriate, because when you're in a meeting and you're in person, you grab the mic and you say, I challenge the ruling of the chair, and there's Robert's Rules method to be able to do that, turning to the body, taking it and saying, we need to have a vote. And I was prohibited from doing that on a Zoom option. I've had to do Zoom options, but only because I was in England for a special meeting. I was at my father's wedding for another one, but that was also, I think, a special meeting. I don't know, but I don't like the Zoom option, and we need to get rid of it.
I have never attended an SCC meeting from Zoom, but I do agree with Olivia that the Zoom option is extremely difficult to manage. We've tried to put some help in place because the bylaws do call for it, and I'm going to comply with the bylaws. So as long as we have a bylaw that says that people can call in, we're going to allow people to call in, but it is very difficult to manage. So now we are actually having an intern who is specifically watching the Zoom and watching for comments to make sure we're not missing things. So we've tried to make it better, but I mean, Olivia's correct. It's very difficult to manage the Zoom option at SEC meetings.
Thank you. And once again, if you have questions you would like, please get with the secretary, the candidates afterwards. So now we come to the end. We'll start with you to give a 2-minute closing statement.
Well, again, thank you so much for coming out and listening to us on your Thursday night. I appreciate that. I'm running for re-election because there's more work to be done. I've spent a lot of time over the last 2 years building some infrastructure to make things easier, to help candidates have more resources. We have more tools for them that are free that they can use. We set all of that up for them. We've got new data security that is making sure that our delegate data is not in a Google Sheet that somebody could hack, for example. But there's more work to be done. There are more bylaws that the SEC has not considered yet, that I spent a lot of time writing and going with a fine-tooth comb through every period, comma, and apostrophe in the bylaws. And I also see this moment where the party is at an important inflection point. Obviously, we've got our 2 chair candidates here today. I'm really disappointed that Phil Lyman is not our governor, and we have work to be done. Rob spent a ton of time in the legislature advocating for changes to our election laws, which are needed. A lot of those bills got watered down, and that means that we need a stronger legislature that's actually going to make the hard choices to clean up our elections laws. And I'm committed to supporting whoever is chair to make sure that that happens, but also to make sure that we keep Utah red. We need to get Republicans elected, and the party is critical to making sure that we get those candidates, working with PACs like DCC, and then we provide them the infrastructure and the funding to actually win.
So again, my name is Olivia Dawn, H.W. Horlocker Williams. And the reason that I am running for secretary is because I believe that in the last 2 years, as much as Stafford has put effort in, the actual roles of the secretary, the management of data, the accessibility of data, the ability to hold people accountable, especially on the bodies that the secretary actually sits on, have not been available. As Davis County Republican Party secretary, I requested attendance for our personal state central committee members, and it took a month to get it. And it's because Stafford didn't even have access to it for a little while. She had given it to the interns. And while giving it to the interns is great, she also was the secretary and needed to have access to that so she could provide it. Now, she did a great job at the rebranding and some other things. I don't like our logo, but that was brought to the body, and the body voted to approve it. So regardless of that difference, she's done some great things with the rebranding, but that's not the role as laid out to the secretary. And I want our party to run our own primaries. I want to get out of the hands of the state, and we need to be able to do that. And if we do not have someone who is managing the data appropriately and has it readily accessible, if we cannot hold our elected officials accountable, I want to get Republicans elected, but Republicans who actually align with our platform. I'm sick and tired of having someone be able to get on the ballot by gathering signatures and getting to be able to put their name forward when they have nothing to do with the party. That's so problematic. If you're a Republican, then you are going to follow the Republican Party processes. You're going to align with the platform, and you're willing to be vetted by the delegates like we're doing tonight. And as a secretary, the job is to have specific things done, minutes that are readily accessible, resolutions that are on the website, attendance votes that are there and able to be collected immediately. That's the role of the secretary. All the extra stuff, that's good, but it needs to be done after the role of the secretary is done first. And that's what I commit to doing, is the role of the secretary and anything else that fits in my time after that.
I'd like to thank Olivia and Stafford. And once again, hopefully you'll stick around in case anyone has any questions you'd like to ask afterwards. So let's call up Phil and Rob. All right. Who wants to pick odds or evens?
Odd.
Here you go. It's 3 again. So I had a feeling I was going to say, someone's going to say evens because they were going to go against. Sometimes you overthink things. Okay, so kind of the same approach we did with the secretary candidates. We'll give each of you 3 minutes for an opening statement, and then we have 10 questions, a minute each. We'll go back and forth, so Phil will go first. Then
That meant you go first. I don't know if that meant you get to choose who goes first.
oh, I should say, whatever. I guess you get your choice.
He could go first if he wants to go first. I'm good with whatever.
Okay, so.
Well, first, Don, it's a pleasure to see you. I look forward to seeing you in the chair's position here in Davis County and all the good work that he'll do. Don has been at the grassroots working his tail off for a long time, as so many of you have, Tina included. It's a pleasure to be with all of you guys. How many, out of curiosity, here in the room are state delegates? So all but maybe 4 or 5. And there's a couple of future state delegates that aren't old enough yet. So that's nice to see the future state delegates here in the room. So first, I want to thank all of you as state delegates for doing the work that you do. Obviously, as state party chair right now, you have 2 candidates here. I'll tell you, I think I'm the right guy for the job. He thinks he's the right guy for the job. But something that I absolutely know is that we are the right people for the job. And what I would challenge all of us to do is to think about why we're Republicans, to think about what it is that we're trying to accomplish, and to think what we can do together. Something that some of you might not know, Phil and I have been friends for 10 years, maybe 11 years. And I'll tell you, it's no different today than it was 6 months ago or a year ago. This is a friend of mine. It's not going to change. And so to anybody, any state delegate, anybody in the press, anybody else who's trying to ratchet up the vitriol and the anger and trying to make me mad at him or him mad at me or trying to divide the Republican Party, I'd encourage all of us, let's tone it down. Because I'll tell you, our party is stronger when we are unified in vision and mission. It doesn't mean we have to agree all the time, but our vision and mission, we don't even have to really wonder what it is. It's laid out in the platform. The platform is the unifying document. And I know that Phil Lyman believes in the document. He believes in the platform. I know that I believe in the platform. And I know that you as state delegates believe in the platform. So let's be focused on the things that matter to make sure that the Republican Party is strong. And most importantly, the principles that our party fights for are strong and able to be a force multiplier for good for our families here in Utah. Are any of you paid as state delegates? The answer, of course, is no. Are any of us paid as officers in the party? No. We do this because we have a motivation, we have a reason. I'm guessing your reason is very similar to my reason. My reason is my 4 kids. My 4 kids is truly the motivating factor in every element of service I give to the Republican Party. I'm guessing that you have names that come to mind. Mine are Henry, Oliver, Finley, and Goldie. Those are my 4 kids. Think about the names of what motivates you in your public service here in the party. I'm guessing it's your kids, maybe your family, maybe your neighborhood, whatever it may be. Faith, family, and freedom. Those are things that the Republican Party believes in. I'm committed to making sure that the Republican Party and the strength of the party here in Utah continues on for years and decades and all the time necessary to come into the future for our kids and our community. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Rob. I was going to just really land into Rob, so he just like told, no, we are friends, and he's helped me out with some really important things in public lands issues and things like that. Politics is an interesting game, as you all know. I got involved in it because I saw some horrendous policy decisions that were destroying the lives of good people, honest people, and I wanted to find out why. Why do we make decisions that empower an agency to come in arbitrarily and just walk right over the top of people and hurt them? And then as you dig into it, you look at the property taxes that are going up, the regulations that are going up. It seems like it's a one-way street. It just goes one direction, worse and worse. The government expands and the liberties of the people yield, and that's a serious problem to me. So I got involved and ran for county commissioner, and I was asking those questions, and one thing kind of leads to another and trying to find out what the answer is. But in my estimation, I look at it, and there is an elite ruling class. They feel like they are entitled to make the decisions for the rest of us. That's not America. That is exactly the opposite of what our founding fathers put together for us, because they'd come from that. They'd come from lines of kings and monarchs and tyrants. And they said, you know what, in America, things are going to be different. And they had an opportunity. Those men had an opportunity, and women had an opportunity to enrich themselves beyond measure. They're in the promised land. They're in the land of milk and honey. And what did they do instead? They gave us a government that was almost pirate-proof. They tried to make it pirate-proof to where people couldn't come in and use it for plunder, that it would be used to protect the people at the bottom. So our government is a government of the bottom up. It's always going to be the individual freedom that drives America. And that's the part that has gotten me involved in politics. I was listening to a book. I drove to Texas 2 days ago and then drove back yesterday. And I said, you know, there's a book. It's Sam Adams. It's 14 hours and 14 minutes. And the drive from Blanding to Fredericksburg is 14 hours and 14 minutes. This is not a coincidence. So, but I was listening to the book on Sam Adams, and one of the things that he pointed out is he said that he didn't have he was not infatuated by power or money. It didn't impress him. And I feel like that's kind of me. I am not drawn to any of the power or any of the money. I am drawn to the freedom that comes to ourselves and our posterity. Just like Rob said, I see my kids and now my grandkids and all of them, and it excites me. And I know that was that a sign that? Okay. so that's what drives me to do this. It took me into the county commission, into the state legislature, running for governor, all of these things in pursuit of finding out why do we have bad policies that are being made, and I really believe that it's because we have turned our government over to the elite.
First question. Why are you a Republican, and what purpose does the party serve in the state?
So I'm a Republican because I agree with the platform. And what purpose does it serve? It's influence. We create a party so that we can leverage our influence. The thing that's been really astonishing to me as I look at Utah, we've got the Republican Party is more than four times bigger than the next largest party, the Democrat Party. And somehow we feel like we have to pretend to be less than the party than we are. I want to see the Republican Party flex its muscle. Our threat in Utah is not the Democrats, it's the Republicans, and it's especially the Republicans who are running in. They know that they have to have that R by their name, but they do not hold our values. And I love the Republican Party. I love the platform.
I'm a Republican for the very same reason. It's the principles that we believe in. Ultimately, if we veer too far from those principles, I won't be a Republican any longer, right? It's not just about the brand of the Republican that holds me here. It's the principles that this party uniquely fights for. I hear, way back in the day, all the parties believed in federalism and freedom and all of these limitations on government. You don't see that anymore. It's this party that's fighting for that. So I believe in the Republican Party for that very purpose. The purpose of the party is pretty clear here in Utah. It's laid out in our party constitution. In Article 1, Section B, the purpose of the party is to nominate and elect Republican candidates in partisan office, promote our principles as laid out in the platform of the party, and to abide by state election law and perform the functions as laid out in state election law. That's the purpose of the party. As chair, that's how I've always tried to conduct myself, how I always will try to conduct myself. But again, I'm a Republican because these principles lead my family to a better future and focuses us on God and freedom.
Next question. What do you value most in life?
Family. Family and my relationship with God. And I'll tell you, my commitment to family comes from the good and the bad, as I'm sure many of you. I grew up in a single mother home. The relationship I have with my dad is not one that's close. We don't agree on a lot of things. He's a very liberal-leaning Canadian. After my parents divorced, he moved back to Canada. So I grew up, by and large, without a strong father figure in the home. I had a couple of different stepdads, some abusive. My dedication to family and commitment to family, the thing that matters most, is because I know how important it is when you have it, and I know how important it is when you're missing it. And there has been nothing better in trying to be the best dad that I could be, the best husband that I could be, than relying on God, because He's taught me correctly. His principles have taught me correctly. So when I'm running and I'm stumped and I don't know how to do the thing I need to do to support the thing that matters most, my family, I turn to God and I generally find the right answer very quick. And when I don't, it's my stubbornness I have to overcome first.
Definitely family, but I would say freedom. Freedom to direct our lives, to be the people we were. I believe in personhood, and the Declaration of Independence is so beautiful in the way that says that we have rights simply by virtue of our existence, and that freedom is worth everything, and it's what makes us able to have good families and to give that to our kids, to secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity. That's what's by far the most important thing in my life. I have a motto in my politics, and it has kind of driven a lot of things. It's the honest people have rights too, and I believe that the only hope we have is that when things are done that are wrong, that we have other people that will stand up and say this is not right, and that drives a lot of my politics is trying to stand up for people, stand up for their freedoms, stand up for their right to just exist, the personhood, parenthood, statehood pillars.
What is the plank in the platform that has the most meaning to you? What is a practical example of that, and how have you fought for that principle?
I mean, there's a lot, and if I play off the personhood, parenthood, statehood, I guess the one that speaks to me always really strongly is sovereignty, state sovereignty, in the party platform. You know, what is a state? The 10th Amendment says, you know, we reserve any powers not delegated or reserved to the state or to the people. That's not two different things. That is the same thing. The people are the state, and the sovereignty of that state says that we will decide what is best for our state, for our schools, for our health, for everything. And as you see the motivation, again, of people, kind of pirate-minded people, they're always looking at how could we get more power? How could we get more money? How could we take this government position and turn it into something that benefits us? And if we understand the idea of state sovereignty, we say, thank you, federal government, very much for your input, but we're going to handle this one on our own. We're going to take care of our own families, our own schools, our own health care, our own resources, our own public lands, et cetera.
The things that matter the most to me in the platform, you've got family values, you've got freedom of religion and faith, you've got pro-life. Those matter to me on a personal level. But when it comes to my party participation, I actually share the opinion of Phil here. It's sovereignty, it's limited government, it's states' rights. And the reason being is because no matter how good or bad we're doing on those things, I'm always going to be pro-life. I'm always going to be pro-family. So those values are irrespective of the effectiveness of the party. But the sovereignty, the states' rights, the limited government, that's how we protect those things that are going to be true no matter what. And you look, the federal government is way out of step. States' rights and federalism, way out of step. Sovereignty, it doesn't happen. We have to do better. You look, there's a great piece of history in our own history. During the Great Depression, Utah was actually affected at one of the highest rates of unemployment, but we didn't have the breakdown in society because you had the culture and community and the LDS Church and some other faith groups that backed it up. To Phil's point, we can take care of Utah a lot better than relying on the federal government.
What is one specific mistake you have made in your public service, or what is something you would have done differently?
Great question. Looking back, you find a bunch of things that you'll do differently, right? Looking back, you get to learn from both the lessons. It's like, oh, things worked really well, but we could have done a little bit more. But you also get to look back and be like, wow, we tried really hard, and it still didn't work as effectively as what we needed to do. So a couple of examples of that, there's some logistical planning that we have implemented and some changes that I've worked with the State Central Committee on our rules that will help to create a better process for state conventions so that we don't have the delay in processing that we had last year. Last year's state convention, the location was abysmal, for example. But it was the only space in the entire state of Utah that was available when I became party chair. But our rules did not allow for party chairs to go into the future to lock down future venues. The State Central Committee and I worked together immediately after that. We changed that. You can now go 4 years in advance so you can find the right place. So I think this question is important to always look and figure out what doesn't work and try to make sure that you're making adjustments to fix it.
Rob and I have something in common. We both have beautiful wives, very supportive, intelligent, supportive people. And I was called to be in the bishopric. I'll just tell this story real quickly. And after I called some people to speak in church, it was my first, I was young, and I told Jody, I said, I'm gonna send them a thank you note. And she looked at me, she said, they didn't do it for you. And it was a real lesson to me. And I think the mistake that I've made in my politics also is thinking, well, I don't want to impose. I don't know if they're really up to this. And you find out after the fact that they love this country, they love this state just as much as I do. And I probably have not been as willing to, to take that for what it's worth, to recognize that I'm surrounded by true patriots who really, really love their country, and then just give that full expectation of their commitment and their devotion to the same causes that are really important to me. And sometimes I'm kind of a little bit of a maverick and do things on my own. So.
What is your current primary source of income for you and your wife?
Savings. So I've got a CPA firm, and it's a little firm. My dad was a CPA before me in Blanding, Utah. I tell people it's my happy place. I love my firm. I love my employees. They do really amazing stuff in my absence. But it also does some really great things for our community, and it does provide income. And we do a lot of business development stuff, sitting down with clients, helping to form corporations and partnerships, and pull things in and improve their bookkeeping. And we've seen some really small businesses grow into some really massive businesses, and that's been really exciting. And that's where I get my paycheck from.
So for me, I spent 13 years in the United States Senate working for Senator Mike Lee. So I took that as my professional kind of path. And then shortly after being elected to the party chair position here, I left his office. One of the reasons I left his office is I didn't want this service to ever seem as it was beholden to one individual, even if I agreed with him. I didn't want my decisions to reflect on him or his decisions to reflect on the party. So I moved into the private sector, and I do consulting work. So I consult on businesses, startups, a couple of energy companies, and a bunch of nonprofits. One of those, the Other Side Academy, Other Side Village, that you may have heard about. They do really great work. So this last legislative session, for the first time, I actually had to register as a lobbyist to represent them on trying to get some reporting requirements done. They had some COVID funds that came to them, and they were then obligated to report to the federal government for 50 years on funds that happened one time. And so we were able to get that changed. But yeah, I do consulting work for companies and nonprofits.
What is your opinion of Mitt Romney?
I give credit to anybody that's willing to put their name on the line and to step out and be involved in the process. But I also give respect to people who tell us what they believe, whether I agree with it or not. And so I get dismayed when you have people who portray or claim to believe one thing and then conduct themselves differently. And I think that Senator Romney at times conducted himself that way. But luckily, his time of service is in the past. I wish him well in his retirement. And I think at his heart, he was a good man. But I do think you're better off when you're just true to what you believe in, and let people make that decision if they agree with you or if they disagree with you. I will tell you, in the 2 years that I was party chair, well, I guess year or plus, when he was in the Senate still and I was party chair, it would have been nice if he had ever answered my phone call.
You know, honestly, Mitt Romney to me kind of symbolizes everything that's wrong with the elite, established, entitled ruling class, and why we ever had a senator from Utah who was the governor of Massachusetts is just, it made my head spin at the time. I did support him for president in 2012. I thought, okay, I'll get behind him, but with all of the stuff that's happened out here, he's really become kind of symbolic to me as Utah's deep state, and manipulating things from behind the scenes and putting their thumb on the scales of development. And we have a lot of that in Utah. And he is a celebrity. He's a celebrity in Utah, and it's very effective running in Utah with the LDS connection and those kind of things. So on a personal level, I've had some dealings with Mitt Romney. I wasn't all that impressed on a personal level, but on a policy level, I was really appalled by Mitt Romney.
What is the relationship of the chair and the State Central Committee?
Well, the State Central Committee is the board. They are the ones that are making the decisions. They are the ones that are bringing forth the motions and making the bylaws and the Constitution. The chair is the chairman and conducts those meetings, and I always admire a chair who is willing to put themselves out there and assert themselves and be a factor, to be an effective person rather than just a passive individual. Rob's been an effective person. He's affected politics, and whether I agree with all of the things or not, I do appreciate a person who doesn't, they're not a potted plant. But at the end of the day, the SCC is the power of this. You've got 180, 200 SCC members. They are in charge of running the state. They know their counties, they know their precincts, they know their districts. They bring their diverse opinions. And the Constitution was designed not to make everybody agree, but to bring all of the diversity together and to help people to still move forward in that way. And I think the chair is really key in doing that.
Spot on. The State Central Committee is the governing board. The chair's position is, by and large, in many instances, a facilitating position. And then there's some places where you have the authority and whatnot. But the State Central Committee is a further extension of all of you as state delegates. It's the principle of a constitutional republic that our caucus convention system espouses and represents so beautifully. Is you elect people to then represent you on the next stage of the conversation and the dialogue. It's the same thing. These State Central Committee members, many of them are here in this room, people that I've had the pleasure to serve with and have agreed with a lot of the time and at times haven't agreed with. But that's the process. And you have these people representing 29 diverse counties. I think it's very important to work closely with the State Central Committee and facilitate the dialogue for them to have these debates and to see that give and take and get us to a place that it's the direction that will benefit the party and benefit the state of Utah moving forward with.
Do you consider SB 54 bad? And if so, what have you done to fight against SB 54?
Yeah, hard stop, yes. I have never once liked SB 54. I have never once hid my disdain for it. I have never once watered down my dislike for that system. Since it was passed in the legislative session in 2014, I have opposed it. We have had 5 election cycles now, 16, 18, 20, 22, and now 24 that we've had to go through the effects and the hamstring effects of the rules of SB 54 that takes and it keeps the party process, right? Wink, wink. It gives you a way to get around the party process. That's what it did. And so I have always opposed it. I've always promoted those candidates and those causes that want to get back to the spirit of pre-SB 54, the spirit of the delegate process. Firmly believe in that. I'll tell you a couple things that I did. The bylaw that allows for the party to solely give resources and support to convention winners, I authored that 6 years ago. It was passed 5 years ago, and for the first time last year, we actually used that bylaw and only gave resources, support, and funding to our convention winners.
I've said before that SB 54 is a symptom, and it's a symptom of a bigger problem, which is that you've got a GOP that is convinced that the legislature is in charge of their destiny. We are not a political, or we're not a state agency. The GOP is a completely independent party, and the problem with SB 54 is that we're asked to defer to the state legislature. I think Olivia said something about running our own primaries. Wouldn't it be awesome if we let the lieutenant governor know who our candidate was at the end of a primary election instead of the other way around? And we can do that. We could run our own elections. We could run our own primary. We could do it in a day at the precinct level, in person, on paper, and all of those things that we know work. We could 100% circumvent SB 54. I don't like even giving the deference to the legislature of saying, well, but we have to do what the state law says. It's like we really have the right of association. That's a constitutional right, and if we don't stand up for that, you can bet that the legislature is not going to stand up for it for us.
This next question is a little long, and I might editorialize from what we have here, but the party constitution gives us the right to control our membership. Bylaw 8 was passed by the State Central Committee in 2018, which required those who gather signatures to have their party membership revoked. I personally feel that we would have repealed SB 54 in 2020 had we a party chair who would have enforced SB 50, who would have enforced Bylaw 8. But so many members, including myself, want to reinstitute Bylaw 8. If Bylaw 8 were passed again, would you what would you do with that bylaw 8 if you were party chair? Would you revoke party membership of signature gatherers?
Absolutely. I've actually been trying to find a big R, like a blingy R, because it's a really valuable thing. In Utah, you got to have the R. And we let people come in and just commandeer it. This last election, I mean, 2024 was a great year to test this out because you had a governor who you got the lowest percentage of any incumbent in history at convention. He didn't qualify. He didn't get his signatures. I don't think he won the primary, yet he still sits there on the general ballot with that R by his name. It's a really valuable thing. And if the party would step forward and say, we're going to protect that. That comes from our local precincts up through our caucus systems. And that's the way that we make sure that we get good candidates on the ballot. And we've got to take control of that. And whatever the SEC says that they want to do, if they want to pass Bylaw 8 and they've got the ability to do that, I would back it up 100%.
That's the exact right answer there at the end. If the SEC passes a bylaw, you have to abide by those bylaws. You look, and I'm a big believer, you follow the Constitution. Second to that, you follow the bylaws, then you follow the rules. So if it's in there, you've got to abide by that. There would be a question if state law is infringing upon that, in which case you got to force your way to fight to change state law. I firmly believe that we have to empower the strength of that Republican brand. We have to do that in a host of ways, both through our SEC process, our rules process, through the state legislature, and most importantly, by reinvigorating our precinct level, like our grassroots on up. We can have a groundswell of support that will take away the ability for folks to then just go with the status quo in the legislature or elsewhere. We can show the strength of that. There will be some changes we'll have to make to the party process if we want to really control that R next to our name, and a lot of other states have done this. It's something that we should look at. If getting that R next to your name on a ballot, you have to come through us to do that. That's what it was before SB 54. We need to get back to that.
Is the Utah Republican Party an entity of the state, or is it a private organization?
Easy answer. It's a private organization. It has nothing to do with the state of Utah, aside from the fact that this is the state that we love and we all get to reside in and call home. So we have to then deal with the reality of we're here in Utah, but by no means do we defer to the state for permissions or anything else, but we do have to abide by state law. Like I mentioned earlier in one of my answers, even in our party constitution, the purpose of the party, we are required to abide by state election law. And so that's a place that creates this tension point that even if somebody says, well, Robert, just pay attention to our party documents, ignore state law. Well, even our party documents say I have to abide by state election law. So where you don't like it, you spend the time to change the law. But absolutely, we are a private organization. We should assert ourselves that way and use the strength and force and brand and reputation and funding of the party and all of you to get the laws changed where they are creating that conflict.
I believe in nullification. I believe that if someone says that the party's got to go along with something that's completely unconstitutional, that we don't have the right of association, that it is our right, it is our duty to stand up and say we are not going to do that. I understand the problems that it creates. I've been to jail for such problems. But sometimes that's exactly what needs to happen is that people will say, this is not your realm. So to answer the question, yes, very much we're a private organization. In Utah, we are an 800-pound gorilla. And we've got to be willing to say to the legislature, you need to be careful the way you treat the party. You need to give us a little bit more deference. You should be listening more to us. What I've seen is a party who gets intimidated, threats. We're going to replace we're going to take away the caucuses. We're going to take away this. Well, God did not give us the spirit of fear, and I'm not afraid of taking on a contest. When someone says, if you do this, then bad things are going to happen, I say, well, then let's get on with it. Let's do that and see where this ends, because I believe we're in the right.
Okay, that comes to the end of our questions, so now we'll go to the 2-minute closing statement.
Okay. All through my campaign for governor, I would tell my people, and you can ask any of them to work, they got sick of hearing it, ask not what the party can do for you, ask what you can do for the party. And there's a really important reason for doing that, is it takes you from being the effect, being the recipient of some bad things, into being in charge of it. This is my party. This is our Republican Party. What can we do? What can we do for this Republican Party? I've worked with attorneys, some will call up, hey, did you get that bill paid? Did you do this? Did you fill out that form? Did you do this? I have other attorneys that will call up and say, what can I do to help you? How can I help you with this? And it's such a different feeling. Again, I go back to the willingness of people in Utah to engage and to be part of this process. And they want to know, what can I do for the party? How can I help the Republican Party? The narratives that have been coming out here recently are, if Phil Lyman is the chair, they won't be able to raise any money. I believe that's completely incorrect. Number one, I raised more money than any non-incumbent governor in the history of the state. I can raise money. I've got friends with money. But more importantly than that, there's 925,000 registered Republicans who are waiting for that signal. Are we going to stand up for ourselves? And I would rather have 100,000 people donating $10 than 10 people donating $100,000. And that's what I believe that we're looking at here with this party. I start out by saying politics is interesting. Honestly, it's one of those things that you get into and you realize, not only is this not all pain, there's some real enjoyment in this. There's some real satisfaction. I believe in freedom. I believe in liberty. I want what's best for my kids. And I look around and I'm associating with like-minded people. And there is nothing better. There's not a better feeling to know that you have the same level of commitment that I have in standing up for what we truly believe in. And right now, it's a circus. It's a wild, wild ride. We got people on one side threatening, and we've got people on the other side that are saying we're going to go and do something productive, and that's what I'm looking forward to doing. And thank you so much, Dawn and Tina and everybody that's helped put this together.
Key question that we have to ask ourselves, all of us, is what are we going to do? And I challenge all of you to think about what you're going to do today, what you're going to do a year from now, what you're going to do 5 years from now. We need a 5-year plan, all of us. We need a 10-year plan, all of us, within the party and within our neighborhoods and within our families. The Utah Republican Party, the principles that we believe in, our platform is a force multiplier for good that has helped contribute to the fact that Utah is the best state in the country. But our potential is far higher and exceeds in tremendous ways anything that we've accomplished thus far. So our high water mark is not enough. I firmly believe that God expects us to step up to the plate and to rise to the occasion and to be that force for good, because Utah needs to be in the driver's seat as an example to the rest of the country. You look in Utah, here in the Intermountain West, in my lifetime, we went from all Republican states except for labor union, tough Montana, that was kind of a lot of miners and different things. And what is it now? Nevada, New Mexico, Arizona, and Colorado have all gone red to blue. Utah's next. Now, we did get Montana back because the Democrats went so crazy, but Utah is next if we're not careful. So Utah has to do the work now to make sure that what happened in those states never happens here. And again, I believe that our potential and our expectation from our maker is for Utah to be the force multiplier to retake those other states, to make sure they turn back from blue to red, and then be the example to the rest of the country. I'm proud of the work that I've done. I'm proud to have gone and knocked doors to help elect Donald Trump in Arizona and in Nevada. I'm proud of the $3 million that we've raised here. I'm proud to have had the back of the people who actually earned the nomination and the support of delegates. I am proud of the work that we do as a party. I'm proud of the work that all of you do as state delegates. And my commitment is to work my tail off for the next year, 2 years, 5 years with all of you to build Utah to reach its potential.
So I'd like to thank Phil, Rob, Stafford, and Olivia. Let's give them one more hand. And with that being said, I think, did you have anything you want to say, Tina? And so turn the time over to Tina.
I actually would like for you to explain Bylaw 8, like how it happened, how it ended.
So keep in mind that I call SB 54 the Incumbent Protection Act of 2014. It was an unholy compromise made between legislators and Count My Vote that was trying to eliminate the caucus convention system. So a number of us, we passed a resolution back in like 2013. I was a sponsor of it at the State Central Committee, where we vowed to fight. We would do everything we could as a party to stop Count My Vote. And then suddenly SB 54 came along, and suddenly we said, you know what? You all legislators pass it, and we're not going to hold you accountable because this is a compromise, and that was the biggest mistake. I'll be honest, I didn't go, and I told them I was going to hold them accountable. So nevertheless, we began this battle of SB 54 because truly, I just want to say SB 54 is dangerous because if the state of Utah can tell a Republican Party, which is a private organization, how it can choose or how it must choose those who represent it, what else can it do? Why couldn't it tell this church who it must put in as your pastor? Why couldn't it tell your kids' softball league who they must put as running the program? Because it's all about freedom. So a number of us, and Tina was one of them, and there might be others, but we got labeled the Gang of 51, and I hated it at the time. But now I embrace it because we were attacked. I'll be honest. We had 400,000 emails sent to people in the state telling just what awful they manipulated video. We almost got arrested at a meeting. I'll give that story. Can you get that later? So we had this battle about trying to repeal SB 54. And so one of the things we decided to do, and we felt we could do, is that one of the judicial decisions, the judge had said that the Republican Party had the right to control its membership. So we called a special meeting. I was part of calling the special meeting. I wasn't actually at that special meeting. I was actually down in Blanding because my mother died and the meeting was the next day, and I didn't necessarily feel like going to a contentious State Central Committee meeting the next day. But Bylaw 8 was passed. And Bylaw 8, and we left a lot of loopholes in there because this was right before the election, but we want to do this as a test. We wanted to see what we could do to get SB 54 repealed. Well, so the chair at that time would enforce it. Rob Anderson. I have nightmares sometimes about that time in our party. So we get to 2019. December 2019, we had a meeting down in a junior high or middle school down in Utah County, and they were going to repeal, we wanted to repeal SB 54. Oh, no, repeal this Bylaw 8. And once again, Bylaw 8 stated if you gather signatures, your membership in the party was removed. Keep in mind, we knew there would be a legal fight because of it, but we felt it was a legal fight we would win. And we had financial backing to do so because we had, if you remember, Dave Bateman at the time was putting a lot of money into helping us fund this. So we kept Bylaw 8 because you have to get 2/3 to pass a bylaw. We kept Bylaw 8 by 1 vote. It's a very dramatic roll call, but we did. Nevertheless, I don't know if I should name names, but I will just say this. So I was just happening walking past the janitorial closet, and a very prominent member of Utah's political scene was talking to Dave Bateman. And they called me, Don, come in. And they were like begging, what compromise do you want to make right now? Because we knew we had the power. But the problem was the party chair wouldn't enforce Bylaw 8. The party chair, Derek Brown, our current Attorney General. We have a bad habit in the state of rewarding people who violate our rules, but I'll be honest. But I firmly believe with all my heart SB 54 would have been repealed in that legislative session because they were scared to death. I saw the fear in their eyes because they knew we had the power. But we gave it all up, and then we repealed Bylaw 8. Because all too often, for all too many in this state, it's about political power. It's about what can I do to keep my power. Although I was told the other day by someone who I consider part of the political elite that I was now a political elite in this state. I asked where my general conference tickets are. But that's what Bylaw 8 is. And I think, and I'll be honest with you, I think I think people are going to beat me to sponsoring it, but to vote for it. And I hope you'll tell your SEC members, and there's lots of people watching this on YouTube, I believe, you call your SEC members and tell them you want Bylaw 8 reinstituted. Because if we're ever going to get SB 54 repealed, Bylaw 8 has to be passed. And it's not going to be a nice time. It's not going to be friendly. But once again, this is about freedom of speech. This is about freedom of assembly. And it goes back to one more time. The state of Utah or any government entity can tell a private organization how it must choose its leaders. What freedoms do we truly have? And now is the time to fight, because once again, we saw the damage that SB 54 did in this last election cycle. It's going to continue to happen, because it's meant to be so the ordinary Joe Blow can never hold elective office in this state again. So let's fight it. Let's fight SB 54 and tell your people we want Bylaw 8 back.
Okay. Hello. All right. So I was a part of all of that. There's a little bit of the story that actually a lot of the story. It was very dramatic. We were successful in not having Bylaw 8 repealed when Derek Brown was chair. Thank you to Delane England, who is a Davis County member who was on vacation in Hawaii. She flew all the way to Utah to attend an SEC meeting, and then that night flew back to Hawaii to continue her vacation. And that was the one vote that helped us to keep Bylaw 8. It was the next chair, where Olivia was secretary, where there was again an effort by similar members of the body to repeal Bylaw 8. It was noticed late. Olivia's secretary refused to include it in the notice because you have to abide by the notice rule. And from that moment on, she was persecuted as secretary. And at that meeting, at the next meeting, they were successful in repealing Bylaw 8, and some other things happened that were not very good. So anyway, I believe as well that we could have solved the problem. So it's up to the people. You know, it's what we're willing to abide by. It's we the people, and the Republican Party is representative government within the caucus and convention system. That is a republic. With SB 54, it's democracy. We are not a republic with SB 54. And I'll give you an example of that. After the whole debacle of the last election with Governor Cox and Phil Lyman, you would think that our legislators would want to solve the problems that were so terrible, all of the election issues. And there were quite a number of election bills that came forward, and there were good ones. And the House, a lot of the House passed those bills, and then they would go to the Senate where they would die, or they were gutted. And the thing about that is that those senators, many of them use SB 54 to be reelected again and again and again. And there is no way, because they have the cash cow to continue to run those campaigns, that Mr. Smith can't, just like what Don said. Mr. Smith cannot go to Washington, D.C. with SB 54. So the legislature has proved beyond a shadow of doubt they will not repeal SB 54. So the answer has to lie within the party. And that's why we need another Bylaw 8, and that's why we need to run our own primaries. So I just want to thank all of you for coming tonight. This is a very important process, and who is elected as our officers to run the Utah GOP absolutely matters in how the state is run. We have more power within the Republican Party than we exercise, and we can really change things if we exercise what we have. So I thank you for coming. I ask you to communicate with other state delegates. Stafford, is Stafford here? Oh yeah, there's Stafford and Olivia and Rob and Phil are all here. They're willing to answer questions. And go ahead.
I'm Uriah Kennedy. I run a podcast called God and Country, and we have delegates on our podcast. Phil Lyman's going to be on our podcast next week, so you can look forward to a good long session with him. I've also talked to Rob to have him come on, and Rob's also going to help us get a booth at the convention so we can interview others. We had Rod Hall on last week. We had Trevor Lee on the week before that. I do have Mike Kennedy coming on here soon. We got Stuart Adams coming on, which I'm going to drill him on SB 54. And so you can watch that all on our podcast. And we've reached out to John Curtis, and his team's communicating with us with a date, and we haven't heard back from Mike Lee. So we have a lot of these people coming on to our podcast. I will just ask you to listen to it so you can actually get a good understanding of what everybody's doing. And it's God and Country, and you can find it on YouTube. Thanks.
All right, everybody. Thank you for coming. 2 weeks from today, is it 2 weeks from today? Anyway, the second Thursday, we'll have our master gardener here. So please come back. If you did not sign our email list, make sure you sign it so you'll get notifications of our meetings. So thank you, everybody, for coming.